Deadlock just got another brand new update, and while it might say minor update on the label, this does actually have pretty huge implications for the meta, and it's really going to shake things up. So, as always, if you want to follow along, a link to the patch notes will be in the description down below, and let's get started. So, let's go ahead and check out some of these general changes, and well, we're gonna need to wait here for 3 minutes because there's one change that actually has to do with the souls in base, which is very interesting. But the first general change is a nerf to the slow heroes in the game, like Mo and Krill, Abrams, anyone who is Stamina Bucket number 3, which is the slow bucket. So Stamina Bucket 3 slowers have had their ground dash time increased from 0.7 to 0.72 seconds, and air dash time increased from 0.49 to 0.51 seconds. So both of those number changes are pretty small, but it does mean that if you are one of these slower heroes, then you are actually going to be taking a little bit longer to do these dashes. They're just a little more sluggish now. They also included a bit of a bug fix in the general changes, so the party member and teammate audio volume slider for voice communications has been fixed. Apparently, that wasn't working before, so now if you have an actual real player in your lobby instead of a bot, you should be able to adjust their volume more appropriately now. It's no longer an all or nothing thing where you either mute them or you have to hear them at whatever volume they're at. At first I thought this was referring to this volume slider, but I think this volume slider was working just fine. But if it wasn't, then it is working, so, you know, that's nice. But now that we're about 3 minutes into this match, and the souls in base will turn on, you get to see a new change that they've added. You can now AFK farm in base. You can see on the bottom left here, my souls are slowly going up. And that's because when these orbs in base expire, they now split, as you can see I only got 5 there, they now split between whoever is in base. So that person briefly respawned, and they got a little bit of money. They stole my money! So you can still shoot them to claim them a little bit earlier, but you don't actually have to sit there monitoring them now if you don't want to, and you can just trickle up souls in base. And wow, I gotta buy an item now! Let's go! So, I mean, obviously this is a ridiculously inefficient way to make money, and you shouldn't sit in base AFK farming these souls. That's a bad idea. But if you happen to be in base for whatever reason, whether you're healing or you just respawned or anything like that, you'll get a little bit more money now than you did before. Alright, now we've got item changes to talk about. This isn't the much-rumored item rebalancing update, but we do have some pretty big changes in here nonetheless. Starting with Crushing Fists, which is just getting some raw buffs, so it now has 5% bullet resist shred per stack instead of 4%, and the stun lasts for 1/4 of a second longer. That's 50% longer, folks, from half a second up to 0.75 seconds. So, this is just better now. Straight up, if you're playing a melee build and you buy this item, it's gonna feel real nice. Look at that long stun, and we're doing a ton of damage. Curse got a pretty unique rework here, so it no longer permanently applies a 14% damage penalty to your character, where once you buy this item, you're doing 14% less damage the entire time. Instead, it is a conditional 25% damage penalty. So as you can see, if I shoot this guy, I'm doing about 5 or 6 damage per bullet. If I go ahead and grab the curse, I'm still doing 6 or 7 damage per bullet. It's escalating as normal with the fixation stacks. But then, if I go ahead and I just curse this guy, you see my damage drop off just a little bit there. So, yeah, we were doing 12 damage there at max fixation stacks, and then when the curse wore off, it went up to 13 to 14 damage. So you can see that big penalty in action. Now, this does not apply to everyone who shoots the cursed target. The wording makes it seem a bit finicky, like you might be applying something to the enemies that makes the enemies take less damage, but that's not how this works. So if I have a friendly Infernus here, and I curse this guy, Infernus will still be doing full damage to the enemy. The 25% damage penalty only applies to the person who is holding the cursed relic, and only for the duration of the curse. But that 25% damage penalty is so steep. It is much harsher than the previous penalty was. It's just limited to a window now. So if you're trying to use the curse for certain ability combos, like the infamous curse into Bullet Dance, the Bullet Dance is going to be doing significantly less damage. But outside of the Bullet Dance, during that 55-second cooldown, you're going to be doing regular damage. You'll be uninhibited with no damage penalty. So this is an interesting rebalance to Curse, and supports are still going to love this item. And Haze probably still may not want to pick up this item because it kind of just nukes your damage in the combo. Like, it just goes so much lower. It's crazy. So, yeah, very interesting rework. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. After that, we've got Diviner's Kevlar in between two very big changes here. So Diviner's Kevlar is only getting 5 more spirit power. That's nice. Small buff, but not nearly as big as the Cursed Relic rework, and not nearly as big as the Echo Shard rework. Now, pay attention here because this is the biggest item change of the entire update, and this will affect numerous characters in the game. Echo Shard. Hey, look, the cooldown got buffed. It's 30 seconds instead of 35 seconds, except that is a lie. Echo Shard now adds the cooldown of the imbued ability to the cooldown of Echo Shard. So if I imbue Echo Shard on Sleep Dagger, as many a Haze has done recently, I don't have a 30-second cooldown. I have a 60-second cooldown on Echo Shard. That is nearly double what the Echo Shard cooldown was before, ladies and gentlemen. That is absurd. If I upgrade Sleep Dagger to get cooldown reduction, then it does dynamically go down, so now I have a 43-second cooldown, which is still substantially longer than the previous cooldown of Echo Shard. Echo Shard also no longer grants you 5% fire rate, so it is now just 5% spirit resist and bullet resist, and they added a half a second post-cast time, so check this out. If I go ahead and throw the Sleep Dagger out and then start shooting and then cast Echo Shard, there's half a second there where I can't shoot, and that's also a half a second delay before I can throw the next Echo Shard. To really illustrate this, let me show you how it feels now to deploy 2 sticky bombs on an enemy. That took substantially longer. You no longer have the instant double bomb on Bebop. Let me show you that again. Yeah, that is way slower than it was before. And look at that cooldown, 48 seconds. Even if I upgrade the sticky bomb, it's still a 40-second cooldown. That's still 5 seconds longer than it was before. So Echo Shard is substantially weaker this update. No matter what character synergy you're using. Look at this. Default cube, Echo Shard, 72-second cooldown. Even upgraded, that's a 52-second cooldown! Sorry, support Viscous. Rest in peace, double cube build. Oh my goodness. So, any builds of yours that use Echo Shard, you need to go back and reevaluate if you still want to be using Echo Shard. This is a monumental nerf to the item. The biggest item nerf we've seen in a long time, honestly. This is crazy. Alright, let's cool down now with some smaller item changes. So, Ethereal Shift, just getting 2 seconds added to the cooldown. A little bit less spammable now. Frenzy now has 10% innate bullet lifesteal, which is pretty interesting. Seems a little counterintuitive because you want to dip below 50% health and bullet lifesteal prevents you from doing that, but at the same time, I think they might be planning something similar to Spiritual Overflow, where bullet lifesteal might upgrade into Frenzy in the item update that's supposed to be coming. That would be pretty interesting. It's only 3% lifesteal off of bullet lifesteal after all. It would kind of make sense. Fury Trance as well. This item that I hate. I still hate it, but it is a little bit better now. So it kind of acts like a mini Fleetfoot now. It removes the movement speed penalty while shooting, and it gives you 1 meter of movement speed. So not quite as much movement speed as Fleetfoot, nor does it have the slow resist, but I tested it on Haze earlier. We'll see if it works on Kelvin. It should. It doesn't work on Kelvin. But for some characters, it allows you to slide now while using Fury Trance. And at any rate, it makes it a little bit easier to chase the enemies, especially considering the fact that you can't freaking use stamina during this item. I still hate that. I still think 99% of players are not going to pick up this item, but for the 1% who do, it is a little bit better. Next up, Life Strike, just getting a massive quality of life fix. So, Life Strike previously, when it hit a trooper and a hero at the same time, sometimes it would prioritize the hero, other times it would prioritize the trooper, and if it prioritized the trooper, you would get substantially less healing. But now it always prioritizes healing off the hero, and the same is true for melee lifesteal. So this is good for most characters, but in particular for Viscous this is amazing, because Puddle Punch is more likely than any other ability to hit multiple entities, including heroes and troopers, and I've noticed many times in my Viscous travels that Yeah, sometimes you just get gypped. You only get 30 healing instead of 100 healing for melee lifesteal even though you hit the enemy successfully, so this is a nice change. Mystic Shot getting a rebalancing here, so the cooldown has been reduced by 1 second, but the spirit scaling has been reduced by 0.3. So 25% less spirit scaling, 12% less cooldown. In the early game, with the flat 40 spirit damage, which is still the same, it's gonna feel roughly the same in terms of its consistency. I think late game it'll fall off a little bit harder, but you get to use it more consistently, so if you miss your Mystic Shot, then at least you'll get it back a little bit faster. Restorative Locket getting a pretty big buff to the healing here. The heal per boon has increased from 0.32 to 0.5. That is pretty huge. You might see this more often on characters like Lash, who really love getting that stamina restore, and now they get a chunky heal too. Scourge getting a nifty rebalancing here, so it no longer provides you with 17% innate debuff resist. Instead, you get 20% debuff resist while the buff is active. And I believe this debuff resist will also apply if you put it on a teammate, just like that. So, as a Rem or somebody else, you can potentially give your team a Scourge. And am I crazy, or does that visual effect look different? Huh. But, yeah, so I guess we have an item that now allows you to give teammates some debuff resist. That's pretty cool. But they did also nerf the damage from 2.5 to 2.3% max health per second, so that is just a little bit worse. Yeah, still pretty interesting change. Now, slowing bullets and weighted shots, both listed here as getting some nerfs. Slowing bullets no longer gives you extra weapon damage. Just straight up, that 15% weapon damage is gone. Massive nerf to slowing bullets. That really does suck for slowing bullets enjoyers. And weighted shots, not immune from this either. It has lost 10% weapon damage from 40 down to 30. Still a really good item, but that damage nerf does definitely hurt weighted shots. I think it hurts slowing bullets way more. That was a really big benefit of slowing bullets, getting that extra weapon damage early, and now it is just a slow, and you only get 12% weapon investment, or a 12% damage from weapon investment. So, like, if you just have this item, you literally lost more than 50% of your damage coming from this item. That's crazy, man. Spiritual Overflow now provides you with 10% spirit lifesteal on the bonus that you charge up. So that brings the total up to 23% lifesteal while this item is running on all cylinders. But they did nerf the ability duration and fire rate both by 2%. A little bit less damage, a little bit more healing. Now this is the second biggest item change of the update, and it is to Spirit Burn. This item is no longer the AoE powerhouse that it once was. It only affects the primary target that you hit with your abilities now, and it no longer has that 12-meter explosion. It still hits the enemies for an initial explosion burst, but that has been nerfed from 110 down to 50. Jeez, that's a big nerf. And they removed the half cooldown against NPC. That all sounds utterly terrible. But there is one redeeming quality. So they changed it from the cooldown being on the item to a per target basis. That means you can consistently apply this to numerous people over the course of a team fight, rather than blowing your entire Spirit Burn load in one go. So take a look at this. If I go ahead and Spirit Burn this guy, no explosion, and you see the cooldown on top of his head. Now, let me go ahead and Spirit Burn Infernus. Oh, and he popped. But now if I go ahead and slam both of them, yeah, it actually applied Spirit Burn to both of the targets, because Ground Strike did enough damage to proc it on both of them. So that's how the new Spirit Burn works. It's a per-target thing, kind of similar to how Silencer actually works, where it builds up the silence on a per-target basis. So this is a big win for Spirit Burn's overall consistency, but it is definitely losing a lot of damage outputs, and for certain abilities, you're not going to be getting that big explosion that just hits all the troopers nice and convenient, so it is losing some value there. And it is also losing the value of, oh hey, let me just snipe one guy, and then that one guy explodes and applies it to his entire team. That's gone too. So you do actually have to hit your own regular AoE abilities on multiple people to get the Spirit Burn now. But if you're playing a more single-target character, Spirit Burn might actually open up to you as an option where you apply it on one person, then you apply it on another person, then you apply it on another person. So yeah, just an interesting rework. Spirit Burn probably is a little bit weaker this patch, but I am curious to see how this new rework plays out. Alright, there are 2 more item changes to go over. First up is Suppressor getting a nerf to the duration by half a second, from 5 down to 4.5. So specifically a 7 nerf, because he's the only character I ever see buying this item. But yeah, still definitely a good item. And then Tank Buster getting a slight nerf. It isn't as impactful as it might seem, but it is still definitely worth noting. Tank Buster no longer procs off of items. So this mostly just affects Mystic Shot. Mystic Shot, as you can see here, even with the Spirit Scaling nerf, is able to achieve pretty sizable amounts of damage, 185 damage. That is more than enough to proc Tank Buster, which only requires 165. And yet, if I shoot this guy, no Tank Buster. So that is a pretty big nerf, and just to prove that Tank Buster is indeed working, little known fact, you can proc Tank Buster on 7th stun. So I procced it there, but Mystic Shot, yeah, just not proccing this item. And that's really the only use case for it. There are a couple of other niche interactions. Spirit Snatch is another item that actually could proc Tank Buster before if you had enough Spirit Scaling, but that doesn't do that now either. So, yeah, mostly just a Mystic Shot nerf, nerfing that interaction between these 2 items. No more 500 plus damage weapon shots coming out from this item. Alright, now we get to move on to the character balance changes. And real quick, if you guys have been enjoying this video so far and you found it to be helpful, of course make sure to like this video, but also subscribe down below so you don't miss out on future update videos, because I make one every time there's an update, big or small. But let's talk about Apollo now. So, Riposte is getting a little bit of a rework to the Tier 3. The base stun duration has gone from 0.6 up to 0.8 seconds. Uh-oh, that's scary. Except the Tier 3 no longer adds the ridiculous 1.6 seconds of stun duration. You previously could get a 2.2 second stun before duration increasing items, and if you got a duration extender, you could literally hit 2 heavy melees on someone you riposte. That's absurd, and that's also gone. So, this actually seems like a nerf to melee Apollo, which, don't know why we're nerfing that, but I think more seriously, if you were to upgrade and have that 2.2 second stun while playing regular old Spirit Apollo, it was just absolutely filthy. Like, that's an ultimate level stun on an ability with a 14-second cooldown. So I don't think this is a targeted nerf towards melee Apollo. I think it's just reworking something that probably shouldn't have been working like that to make it feel better to play against. Now, in return, the Tier 3 gives Apollo 60% bullet, spirit, and melee lifesteal against the riposte target for 7 seconds. So you just get crazy sustain from this ability now. It's kind of a defensive and sustain tool now, more than just the world's longest stun. Next up, a small nerf to Billy's Rising Ram Tier 3, going from 8% to 7% max health damage. Okay, good. Man, if you told me they were buffing Shining Wonder like this 6 months ago, I would have called you crazy. But they really overcompensated with the nerfs back then, and they're still trying to catch back up now. Shining Wonder getting 3 big buffs here. So the radius has increased from 16.5 to 17.5 meters, making it easier to find a bounceable target. The damage has been increased by 10% across the board, and the buffer duration, which is the time it takes to seek out a target before expiring, has been increased by 1/4 of a second, so that's extra time to find a proper bounce target. And wow, yeah, I can actually bounce between these 2 right now, look at that. So, yeah, that's a pretty nice buff to Celeste's ult. Still probably kind of gonna suck a little bit, but it won't suck so bad now. Doorman is getting a lot of balance changes, but the general trend is they are trying to take some of his power out of his base kit and shift it into his upgrades so he's not as strong in the early game. The bullet damage has been rescaled from 26 at base to 24 at base, but the boon scaling has gone from 1.19 up to 1.25 per boon, so a little bit more gun scaling later on in the game. The Call Bell charge time has been increased by 1 second, that's just a flat nerf, less consistency on these. The doorway duration has also been reduced by 5 seconds, from 20 down to 15, but you get that back on the Tier 1. The Tier 1 has been buffed by 5 seconds. And then the Tier 3 range has been reduced from 45 meters to 40 meters, so a little bit less range on that, that's great. According to Joe Chuck, though, they fixed the spirit scaling on this, which means, you're gonna get a ridiculous amount of... Oh, 161. Yeah, that's... Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the range on the doors too much. Holy... Why is that allowed? But similarly, luggage cart is losing a lot of base power and it's being shifted into the upgrades. The base luggage cart only does 60 damage, down from 80, but the tier 1 gives that 20 damage right back. The range, similarly, has been reduced by 5 meters at base, but then when you upgrade to the tier 2, you get those 5 meters back. So by the time you get tier 2 luggage cart, it feels exactly the same as before, but if you don't upgrade the luggage cart, it is flat out weaker. Drifter getting some very common sense nerfs here. Spirit scaling on Rend has been reduced from 1.8 to 1.7, and the silence on the tier 3 has been reduced from 2.3 to just 2 seconds. Thank goodness. Alright guys, am I crazy for thinking this is the most unnecessary buff in the entire world? Singularity cooldown reduced from 265 to 250 seconds. So we're buffing the strongest ult in the game? Huh. Alright, well, am I crazy? Let me know in the comments. Alright, how do I put this? Haze players, I am so sorry. I don't know what Yoshi has against your character, but Haze is kind of deleted from the game this patch. Like, I don't know what to tell you. This is bad. So, Sleep Dagger. Let's just talk about that. Wake up time spirit scaling has been cut down by 1/3, from 0.03 to 0.02. So, yeah, the targets are going to wake up faster. The damage spirit scaling just got chopped down substantially, from 2.8 down to 2.2. That is a lot less damage. Sleep Dagger Tier 2 no longer gives you cooldown reduction. Instead, it applies 1 second of sleep duration. You still get your fixation stacks, though. And then the Tier 3 is now where the 17 seconds of cooldown reduction is located, so you have to invest more to get the cooldown reduction. But, obviously, remember the item changes from earlier. So Echo Shard got super nerfed. Even with the Tier 3 Sleep Dagger, that is still a 43-second cooldown on this, and because of the half a second of cast time on this, that's half a second where you're not actually able to shoot the enemies. So, yeah, this really, really hurts the double dagger playstyle. I don't think too many people are going to be playing this now. But then Fixation also catching strays here. Fixation Tier 3 has been reduced from 0.14 per stack to 0.11. But you now get scaling on this. Fixation Tier 3 scales with weapon damage at a rate of 0.0003, which just looks like 0 on the label here. And it might as well be 0. So I did a little bit of testing on stream, just stacking up items that you would normally get on Haze. Haze loves to stack fire rate, and she generally doesn't tend to stack weapon damage. So, traditionally, Haze will get something like Burst Fire, Swift Striker, Slowing Bullets, right? Let's take the Slowing Bullets out for now. If you just go up to weapon investment here, you get 46% weapon damage. That brings you up to 0.32 per stack. So we get 0.01, I mean. So, remember, we need 0.03 just to reach parity with what Fixation was earlier. So, Swift Striker, Burst Fire, let's go ahead and add a Slowing Bullets. 0.33. Okay, let's go ahead and add a Tesla Bullets. That's not unreasonable. We're still at 0.33. Okay, let's add Capacitor. We're still at 0.33. How about Toxic Bullets? Let's get some anti-heal. Okay, now we're at 0.34. All of that work just to get 0.02. We're still 0.01 under what this gave previously. Alright, now let's be sensible and let's actually play around the change. Let's get some weapon damage. So if I get my fire rate items and then I upgrade Slowing Bullets into weighted shots, that gives me 30%. Okay, we're up to 0.34. Still under what we had previously. Let's throw in a Titanic Magazine. This provides us weapon damage and ammo. Still at 0.34, okay. And then you start to realize there's a little bit of a problem here, because most weapon damage items in the game are conditional, and as such, seems like they don't actually apply to Fixation from my testing. Now, if we have any Haze experts in the comments who can clarify, and maybe even prove me wrong that these do apply to Fixation, please let me know. It's really hard to test, though, because a lot of these come with effects that, you know, mess with the numbers in weird ways, where it's hard to tell visually if it's applying to Fixation or if it's just the conditional weapon damage kicking in. Like Hollow Point, for example. Hard to test, because it also reduces the enemy's bullet resist by 9%. That's a huge damage multiplier. Point Blank as well. Just really hard to test. So we're really limited on our items. And even with all these items, we can still throw in a Tesla Bullets here, and we finally get up to what we had previously. So, oof. Now, there is one item that we can get that will definitely supercharge our fixation higher than what it was previously, and that is Glass Cannon, which provides us with a base 80% weapon damage. And it also gives us fire rate per kill, which is really good on Haze. And now we have 0.37 per stack, so we finally managed to get more damage than we had previously on fixation. You just better not get shot, because Glass Cannon comes with a 13% health penalty. But again, if you just build Haze like you would previously, getting a lot of these items, active reload, and Tesla bullets and stuff like that, like, you are going to struggle to get the amount of damage you had before, until, you know, the mid-late game. So if you rush tier 3 fixation early, you're just flat out weaker than you were last patch, on top of how they gutted Sleep Tagger. And if you want to go back and play Ult Haze, as mentioned earlier, good luck with that. 25% damage penalty, go! Oh boy. Oh, and before I forget, no, fixation does not scale off of levels. It scales off of your weapon damage multiplier, not actual damage from boons. So yeah, I mean, if you like playing Haze, maybe just play Venator or Wraith this patch instead. This is brutal. I'm sorry to Haze mains everywhere. Yeah, Echo Shard Dagger deserved a nerf, but man, she is dead. Alright, let's chill out again. Kelvin isn't actually up next, but I love making puns. And you know what? He did get a buff, so Frozen Shelter also got 10 seconds taken off the cooldown. And just like Dynamo, I'm wondering if this was really necessary. This is another stupendously broken ultimate, but okay, Yoshi, whatever. Ivy, however, was actually up next, and she just got a slight nerf to the tier 3 spirit scaling on stone form from 1.7 down to 1.5, a little bit less damage on this. Lady Geist is getting some nerfs here, so the life drain got its DPS lowered, but the healing has increased. So instead of 75% damage to heal, it is now 100% damage to heal. And they rebalanced the damage so that the healing you get from life drain is effectively the same as you got before, but the damage is just lower. So think of this as a pure damage nerf to the life drain without affecting your sustain. And then Malice also got nerfed. The damage amplification was reduced by 1%, but if you upgrade to the tier 3, you get that 1% back, so tier 3 Malice is still just as strong as it used to be. This means that Lady Geist is overall just doing less damage with the life drain, and she's a little bit weaker in the early game before she maxes out her Malice. Mina's Sanguine Retreat is getting some raw buffs. You now have half a second longer to decide to recast it, and they added an extra meter of range on the tier 3, so you can go pretty far with this thing now. You can take your sweet old time before deciding to cast it again, just like that. So, yeah, pretty annoying buff, actually, holy. Similar to Haze, if you're a Mirage main, well, I actually don't feel bad for you. Why are you playing the most boring character in the game? Anyways, so Mirage got a pretty hard nerf this patch. Fire Scarab duration has been reduced from 7 to 5 seconds. That's 2 seconds off the duration of this, folks. Much, much weaker in the early game. And I say the early game because you get that duration back on the tier 2 upgrade. But the tier 2 upgrade also lost 1 charge. Charges got cut in half. So much fewer charges obviously means much less uptime on this, much less consistency on these during a team fight. Just less value out of Fire Scarabs in general. And the Dust Devil Tier 3 also got nerfed. It no longer increases the lift duration by 0.3 seconds. So it's a lot easier to evade the Dust Devil if you are an enemy who gets lifted by it. And of course, if you're a filthy Echo Shard abuser, you're looking at a 54-second cooldown on that now. So, yay! That playstyle is hopefully finally dead. We'll see. I hope it's dead. And they also fixed a previous nerf not actually working. Jin's Mark Tier 3 was supposed to be 0.75 seconds cooldown instead of 1 second cooldown reduction. It wasn't working, now it is. So Jin's Mark effectively nerfed this patch too. Alright, I just need to show you this. Yoshi! That's a thing now. Yes, you saw that right. Your eyes do not deceive you. You can use items during combo. Any item during combo, including Majestic Leap and other very silly items like that. So, If you want to be the biggest troll, here's how to do it. Step 1. Veil Walker, to go invisible, because if you take damage, you can't actually use Majestic Leap. You need the element of surprise. Step 2, get Warp Stone, so that way you can actually get up on the enemies, right? Because the reveal radius of this is big, so right when you're about to be in a reveal radius, you just want to jump on them. And then step 3, step 3, turn into Holiday and take them all the way back to your walker. Whee! Come here, buddy! Oh! Ouch! Wrong walker! Wait, get me out of here! This is so stupid. This has got to be one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. There's no way this lasts for long at all. Like, I would not be surprised if this gets patched out. I don't know what they were thinking with this. But yeah, you can also do more things than that. You can also get Alchemical Fire, if you want to still use that, you know, whole combo. Feels like people aren't really doing that anymore these days, but if you want to, it's a lot easier to do now. And you can also get a Dispel Magic, or possibly even an Unstoppable, and you can activate those during your ultimate, if you need to buy a little bit more time. So, this makes Mo's ult just so much more flexible. I don't know why they're doing this. This seems like a really bad idea, because he's already really strong. But okay. And also, by the way, I didn't even mention the other buff. So, Burrow cooldown no longer starts after the conclusion of the ability. It now starts immediately. So when I come out of this Burrow here, instead of a 40-second cooldown, it has a 34-second cooldown. So, you know, more Burrows too. That's exactly what Mo and Krill needed. So, just like Kelvin and Dynamo, Paige's ultimate is getting a cooldown buff from 220 to 210 seconds. That one actually makes sense to me, though. I don't think Paige is particularly strong compared to those two. Alright, Pocket Mains, sit down. It's time for your bi-weekly nerf. Now, we know that, you know, we've kept nerfing your Flying Cloak Tier 3 over and over again. It used to be 14 seconds, and then 13, and then 12, etc., etc. Well, we're doing that again. So, your Tier 3 is now 10 seconds instead of 11 seconds. So, yeah, have fun with that. And then Affliction, DPS, you know, we didn't forget about Affliction. We wanted to nerf Affliction too, just like we've done for the past 7 patches in a row. So, Affliction DPS has also been reduced by 6%. This affects the spirit scaling, the upgrades, everything. Enjoy. Yeah, I feel like they just copy and paste the patch notes for Pocket every single time because, like, I'm getting deja vu right now. It's freaking Groundhog Day for Pocket. Like, it's the same thing over and over again. When will enough be enough? Shiv nerfs. Yay! So, stamina regen increased by half a second. Less spam on the stamina bars. And also, Killing Blow recast window has been reduced by 4 seconds. So you have less time to hunt for a target to keep the chain alive. Silver is getting some nerfs here. The gun fall-off range has been reduced from 20 meters down to 17 meters at the start, and 46 meters down to 42 meters at the end. Slamfire, however, getting a weird buff. Slamfire now does 100% bonus damage against NPCs, those being troopers and neutrals, not guardians and walkers. So, yeah, here's my normal damage. And here's Slamfire. Double damage, as you can see. So, Slamfire farming ability, I guess? I don't know. Weird buff. And then Lycan Curse getting some nerfs here. The precast time has been increased by 50% from 0.2 to 0.3. You're definitely going to feel that. The precast move speed has been reduced from 7.6 meters to 2.5 meters. So instead of feeling faster as you shapeshift into a werewolf, you'll actually feel slower for that initial phase. And the tier 1 is losing some resistances too, from 20% down to 15%. Let me show you that speed in action. So, boom. Slower pre-fire, and slower to actually transform. And then after I transform, I do get that movement speed, I do get to move really fast. But, yeah, it's basically going to slow down how effectively you're able to chase enemies while you're actively transforming. The Venator is getting some buffs and nerfs here. So his sprint speed has been reduced from 1.5 to 1 meter per second. You're definitely going to feel that as you waddle around the map. This feels really slow. Can you even call this sprinting? He's hardly speed walking. Anyways, bullet fall-off range has also been nerfed, similar to Silver. Starts at 18 meters now instead of 20, and it ends at 47 meters instead of 51. However, Iridomini, Blessed Stakes damage has been increased by 15 from 100 to 115, but also the cooldown, similar to Mo and Krill's Burrow, no longer starts after the conclusion of the ability. Now, it starts immediately. So, if I use this and I take my sweet old time, because I'm lining up the perfect shots, and the enemies are moving around and I'm having to chase them, and I end up using the majority of the ability here, instead of the cooldown being 145, it is now 130 seconds, as you can see there. So, at most, this will effectively feel like 15 seconds of cooldown reduction, but your mileage will vary, because if you blast all three of these shots out super quickly, then it's not going to feel like as much cooldown reduction. There, I only got about 5 seconds of cooldown reduction, but that's still pretty nice. And the increased Blessed Stake damage does also mean this is a shadow buff to the melee Venator playstyle, because Gut Shot gives you a Blessed Heavy melee. A little bit extra damage on that too, as you can see. Alright guys, Viscous mains in the Viscous community. I told you. Try Puddle Punch Viscous. Play Puddle Punch Viscous. I'm pioneering it. It is the future. Splatter sucks and is lame. And look at what happened. Look at what happened to this character. I am now going to be steamrolling my lobbies because they have buffed Puddle Punch and they have gutted Splatter. I was prepared for this moment, and you were not. So, what happened here? Splatter got taken out behind the shed and shot in the back of the head. This ability sucks now. So, Splatter damage has been reduced from 70 to 55 at base. Ouch. That really, really freaking hurts. You can still barely proc Mystic Burst with the Tier 1, but this is just doing so much less damage on lane now. And the Spirit scaling has been reduced again, from 0.8 to 0.7. Both of those affect Splatter at all stages in the game. It's going to be much weaker on lane, and when you ramp it up, it's still going to be much weaker. They did, however, shift the bounces around. So, the base Splatter now bounces 1 extra time, and then the Tier 3 bounces 1 less time. So when you max this out, you still have 3 bounces, but by default it now just has 2 bounces, which is better than before. But it's not going to be as consistent as the damage was previously. By front-loading the Splatter with a bunch of damage like it had before, it was much more consistent if the enemies were out in the open, as enemies often tend to be. So this Infernus right here, yeah, I'm only doing 55 damage there. Now if we simulate him being in a tighter area where I can actually bounce on him, just like that, well, there we go, I did 83 damage, which is higher than it was before. So if you're able to hit good Splatter lineups and bounce on the enemies repeatedly, your damage can theoretically be a little bit better. You can recoup some of the damage. But the fact remains that if you max out this ability, you have the same amount of bounces as before, but you're just doing so much less damage because they nerfed the base damage and the Spirit scaling again. And they had already been nerfing the Spirit scaling for a while on that Tier 3. So this ability just doesn't do damage now. Like, okay, there's 229 damage, I guess. Hit a bounce, alright, 343 damage, that's okay, but like, this is just a far cry from what it used to be previously. Now, let's take a look at what they did to the Puddle Punch. So Puddle Punch, well, the slow duration is 1 second worse, okay, but they buffed the slow from 20% to 30%. More potency, I think that's a fair trade-off. But here's where it gets fascinating. The cooldown got reduced by 3 seconds, from 24 to 21. You could already spam these like crazy, but look at what happens when we upgrade to the Tier 3. That is a 7-second cooldown! And then, with Rapid Recharge, we get 2 extra charges, 6-second cooldown. And then, if you want rapid or a recharging rush too, here you go. All right, look at the punch bonanza. 1, 2, 3, 4. I had cooldowns on, so we're gonna get a few more than usual. But I mean, welcome to Viscous's bouncy castle. We have all the punches in the world. And once you finally run out of charges, you're going to recoup those charges literally 3 seconds faster than you did previously, and the cooldown was already low, so this is a big, big deal. These just became the most spammable ability in the entire game. And they were already super freaking good for doing lots of damage to the enemies, because you hit them, and each individual puddle punch, yeah, it does less damage than a splatter, but you have so many of them that it adds up, while putting the enemies in a terrible position for your team to finish them off. For a little bit of context, here's what you can do with Punch Viscous in an Eternus 3 lobby. I got 62,000 damage. 1k less than top in the lobby, which is Pocket, and you guys know how much damage Pocket does, especially as the game goes late. So that's freaking incredible. 23 assists, 9 kills. Absolutely steamrolled these guys. And this was before the update. This was before the Crushing Fists buff, the Life Strike buff, the Puddle Punch cooldown buff. If you're not playing Punch Viscous right now, what are you doing? Play Punch Viscous. It's just better now. Trust me, bro. I know I sound a little crazy right now, but I just feel really vindicated by the fact that I've been playing Puddle Punch this much, and they just keep buffing it. Like, I'm gonna have a blast with these buffs. Now, they did also do some other things. They nerfed the Cube Tier 3. They took it from 25 to 20 seconds of cooldown reduction. That definitely hurts. 22-second cooldown on this now. So yeah, less spammable, and I do think that is very, very fair. And then also, they did actually buff the goo ball a little bit. You get 20% resist now instead of 10%, so that brings the total up to 55% resist during the goo ball. That is pretty darn good. Although I don't think the goo ball playstyle is back as something you can play viably, because, well, it's also a spirit scaling playstyle, and they dumpstered the splatter. So, because splatter is bad, Goo Ball also kind of sucks, because splatter is still a big component of your damage in Goo Ball. And also, traditionally, when you play Goo Ball, you upgrade the splatter first, then you upgrade the Goo Ball, and that means you're not upgrading the cube second. Whereas if you play Punch, you always upgrade the cube second. If you're playing Pure Splatter, you always upgrade the cube second. So you actually lose out on a lot of utility and value by not upgrading the cube second. And so, yeah, I still don't think Goo Ball is viable. I think it's just all in on Punch meta again. Like, Punch, upgrade the cube, yeah, cube got a little bit nerfed, but still, I think this is just the way forward. And if you want to try it out, cough, cough, wink, wink, here's a build. Finally, we get to end off on a nerf that I think everyone will appreciate. The most annoying movement ability in the entire game, because it freaking clips through walls and other bullcrap like that, has just been nerfed substantially. So the Tier 2 lost 5 Spirit Power from 40 down to 35. They also just gutted the Tier 3. So from 2 charges down to 1 extra charge, that's very nice. And then the charge time has increased from 4 seconds to 5 seconds, so less consistency on the ability to actually chase the enemies and, you know, clip through walls and stuff, and yeah, why is that a thing exactly? But anyways, that's going to do it for this update video, so let me know what you think about the patch in the comments section down below. Pretty big update in terms of its implications for the meta, despite technically just being a minor update in Yoshi's eyes. So, yeah, this has been pretty darn crazy, man. I can't believe what they did to Echo Shard. Also, if you're playing Splatter Viscous, by the way, I forgot to mention, that's one more nerf, you know? You can't Echo Shard the Splatter now and have it be nearly as consistent. So, yeah, really big shake-up to the meta. I'm excited to play Punch Viscous, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section down below. As always, make sure to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here and you want to see more update videos like this from me, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.